Good morning, afternoon, I guess, everyone. Thank you for joining our Sponsor Spotlight series featuring Black Veatch. My name is Elena Eifler. I chair the Events and Programs Committee of Women+Power, and we're thrilled to have you here today. We're going to have a fantastic panel conversation with this great group of professionals I have on the call today, focused on ESG and expediting the energy transition. Before we do, just a few housekeeping items. And before we get there, just for those of you who haven't experienced the Women+Power event before, not as familiar with us, we are an organization that launched about a year ago now, and we've really come together to create a place where women and our allies can connect in the power industry. A place where we can come together to support one another, help build our careers, help mentor one another, just a real place to connect in this market. We've had a number of events that have started to do this. We've had great success. Our membership has been growing. So we're thrilled to have you here today if this is your first event. And for those of you who are back, welcome back. I wanted to let you know that this session will be recorded and posted on our website. So if you're looking for it at a later date or would like to share it with others, please do so. We'll have that up in the next week or so here. And based on the fact that it will be recorded, your participation is voluntary. Know that we're on the WebEx Live platform, so you will be muted and cameras off automatically, and questions that you do submit will be submitted to our panel only so that they can answer them along the way. Just keep that in mind, and if you're looking for that recording, please check it out on our website. Just to do our land acknowledgement before we actually start into the event today, we are joining you today from the city where the Bow and Elbow River meets in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory of Southern Alberta, the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the land is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Just wanted to stop to say thank you, as always, to all of our supporters of Women+Power. We couldn't provide these events and these platforms for people to connect, to really drive diversity, equity, and inclusion in this industry without our supporters, financial and otherwise. So a big round of applause here, and we look forward to connecting and continuing to this support in the future. So I'm going to introduce our panel moderator today. Felice Mann is the principal consultant at Black Veatch Management Consulting, specializing in decarbonization and transportation electrification strategy. Felice originally hails from Calgary, Canada, and has worked in oil and gas prior to expanding into utility planning, distributed energy resources, customer-sided solutions, and decarbonization. Given her own career transition across energy systems and business functions that span 15 years, she is particularly enthusiastic and passionate about helping utilities, oil and gas, and other industrial companies navigate their energy transition. Felice holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Chemical Engineering from McGill University and a master's degree in Energy and Environmental Policy from Columbia University. So without further ado, Felice, I'll hand it over to you to take us through our panel event.
Thanks, Elena, for the introduction and for giving Black Veatch the opportunity to host this panel. We're really excited to be here and engage with the Women+Power community. And today we'll be speaking to the transitions occurring across our industry. Next slide, please. So a brief agenda. Our plan will be to provide a quick overview of Black Veatch before launching into a panel discussion with 3 Black Veatch professionals who are deeply engaged in the energy transition. Finally, we'll leave some time to answer any questions you may have. So please, think of interesting questions and leave them in the chat, and we'll leave some time at the end to get to them. Next slide. So a quick introduction about Black Veatch for those who might not be familiar. Black Veatch is an employee-owned company committed to the development of sustainable development that lifts communities, protects the planet, and enables global prosperity. We have over 8,500 professionals across 120 offices, including one in Edmonton, Canada. And we perform a wide range of services for our clients, including EPC, so engineering, procurement, and construction services, through to asset management, data analytics, and management consulting. Our global professionals are experienced industry executives, engineers, senior analysts, and technology experts, and we have applied knowledge in the electric, water, oil, natural gas, and technology industries. Next slide, please. So this is a DEI panel, and I wanted to speak to Black & Veatch's efforts surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are committed to DEI for really one simple reason. We know that a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse workplace is an incubator for innovative thinking. We are proud to be on Forbes America's 2020 list for best employers in diversity and recognized by the Human Rights Campaign for a 100% score on the Corporate Equality Index over the last 3 years. Our core DEI initiatives are focused around the 4 objectives you see shown here, such as, so first, closing the diversity gap, where we're prioritizing diversity at all levels of the organization. Number 2, increasing our focus on equity. Number 3, creating an environment based on awareness and empathy. And finally, number 4, investing in our industries and communities. Next slide. So in addition to our vision for diversity, equity, and inclusion, Black & Veatch recently committed to a new sustainability journey. In 2020, we signed 3 United Nations pledges, including the Global Compact, the CEO Water Mandate, and Caring for Climate. This means that we're on the same journey as many of our clients and industry partners. We're excited to be exploring the opportunities as well as navigating the same challenges in the energy transition, all through a lens of exploration, innovation, and accountability. Next slide. Finally, you may be asking about how we're thinking about transitions in the energy landscape. And for us, the key megatrends that we're seeing impacting our industry are shown here. So starting from the bottom, decarbonization, where we're looking to transition to low and zero energy carbon technologies and fuels. Next, and related, electrification, where we're seeing increasing replacement of direct fossil fuel use with electricity in transportation, buildings, and manufacturing. And finally, digitization, where systems are deployed to enable predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Next slide. So with that, I feel like I've done enough talking at this point and would love to get to the more interactive portion of the meeting. I'd like to introduce you to our 3 panelists who will be speaking on their experience with ESG and the energy transition. So starting from the left, and actually on the left of my screen share right now that I can see, Deepa Podewal is a vice president leading the global strategic advisory practice within Black & Veatch Management Consulting. In this role, she provides executive management for transaction advisory, regulatory, financial advisory, and energy market planning services. Deepa additionally leads Black & Veatch's strategic solutions related to decarbonization and serves on Black & Veatch's DEI Council. She holds a master's in energy management from Dartmouth College and a Master of Science in Economics and Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering from BITS Pilani in India. Next, Lisa Filens is an Associate Vice President and Managing Director of Black & Veatch's Environmental Practice. Her experience as a technical specialist, commercial manager, operations director, and P&L leader provides a unique perspective to the practical implications of business decisions to the environment and business risks and opportunities. She holds a JD with certificate in National Resource Law and a bachelor's in environmental policy from the University of Kansas. Last but not least, Christy DeUlis is a managing director at Black & Veatch, leading the company's decarbonization strategy and planning initiatives. Ms. DeUlis is a recognized thought leader focused on business model transformation, investment, and de-risking strategies, federal and state regulatory impacts, and technology implementation. She holds a bachelor's degree from Augustana College and a master's degree in public policy analysis from West Virginia University. So welcome, ladies, and thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to share the stage with you all. I know that you're all engaged in very exciting projects that are related to ESG and the energy transition, but before we go there, I'd love to take some time to look inwards at Black & Veatch and the way that you see that we do business. And so on that, my first question was, I was curious how you see the DEI and sustainability initiatives that Black & Veatch is pursuing and how they impact your day-to-day work. What do you see as the benefits and challenges? And I'd love to start with Deepa, who is, as a member of the Black & Veatch DEI Council, can kind of speak to our initiatives and how you see them.
Sure, I'm happy to. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks again for letting us host this session and engage in this dialogue with you. We really appreciate it. So Lisa, I'd probably, double down on some of what you mentioned in your introduction. Black & Veatch truly is mirroring and mirrored by the DE&I and sustainability journeys that our clients and our entire ecosystem is taking right now. We are a 105-year-old employee-owned company. Over this last year, this is the first time that we've released our annual sustainability report, as well as declared a DE&I strategy. That in itself is pretty noteworthy, because while these have been things that we've believed in, for longer than a year, the fact that we're intentionally putting down some stakes in the ground and sharing out what our efforts are, where we're pointing ourselves towards in achieving these objectives that we've set for ourselves is a first for us. And I know that's probably true for a lot of other participants in our industry as well. We've, again, over this year and a half, we've made a commitment to be a net zero carbon company by 2025 for the first time. We've exited designing and building coal plants, which if you are familiar with Black & Veatch, it's a huge part of our history. This is kind of at the heart of what Black & Veatch has arguably been known for through our 100-year history. So that was a big shift for us. We're now a top 10 solar PV contractor. As Felice mentioned, we've signed 3 UN pledges around Global Compact, the CEO water mandate, caring for climate, and are looking to adhere to the requirements of all of those and hopefully even exceed them. So I'm really, from my perspective, I'm really starting to see how we're internalizing so much of what we're seeing in the industries around us and that we serve. Even our mission statement, has gotten to it's building a world of difference through innovation and sustainable infrastructure. That word has taken on more meaning for us than ever before. And I know we're going to start, we'll later in this conversation talk about projects and other ways that we're engaging externally as well. But I did want to really emphasize, there are material changes in how we are approaching our work that are driven by these core beliefs and these stakes in the ground that we've put in now.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think, as a Black & Veatch employee, that's very exciting for me. Lisa, I'd love to get your opinion on how we're, Black & Veatch is talking about DEI and sustainability. Any thoughts on our approach?
Sure. So this has been a really exciting few years for me at Black & Veatch. 20 years ago, when I was starting to study environmental policy and and do my master's research on environmental justice type topics, I entered a field where that wasn't necessarily the topics that were discussed on a daily basis in supporting clients and their regulatory compliance. And now the topics of sustainability and DE&I are a common occurrence. One of the interesting challenges, though, of that is we all bring our own filters to the terms that we're using as it relates to sustainability. And, even the way we've kind of parsed out the terms DEI and sustainability today is an example of, when we really think holistically about sustainability and, say the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit, DE&I is an integral part of sustainability and sustainable business planning. And so it's really important as we have these discussions and to avoid some of the challenges is to make sure that we're all using the same language in the same way during them. The other thing that I think is a really exciting opportunity and a challenge is the speed of change. Right now, sustainability goals and progress towards meeting those sustainability goals are simply accelerating. And that's really exciting and provides lots of opportunities, but it also means we're never done. And so, we recently completed or supported a survey of the food and beverage industry. And interestingly enough, some of the respondents came back and said, oh yeah, we've achieved our sustainability goals. And we all sort of looked at this and we said, well, that's great, but the journey continues. You've met your first goals, but what's happening is the goals, whether it's DE&I, whether it's environmental related, they're continuing to evolve to support the changing needs that the market is experiencing.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And yeah, on the changing needs piece that you were talking about, and I know that we talked about this when we were doing our panel planning, just looking across the all of you ladies, all the panelists on this group, what I find really compelling is the diversity of individuals that Black and Veatch can bring to bear, not just in terms of gender, but looking across the four of us, we all have different educational backgrounds, different career experience, different cultural backgrounds, and I do think that having that diversity of experience and of thought can really help to provide really informed and great solutions to questions that really are quite new and there's a lot of open question marks on how to approach. And so I think, I really appreciate working in such a forum with such diversity. Great. So with that, would love to kind of take a look outwards then and kind of understand, what you're seeing in the range of projects and what you're hearing from the industry and your clients of how ESG is manifested in the work that you're engaged in and really what your clients are seeing as key drivers to pursuing this work. So I'll start with Deepa again.
Sure, thanks, Felice. I would say that the portfolio of work that we do has significantly morphed recently, and it's centered around helping companies meet their sustainability targets. We typically have come in after the press release, right? Every client of ours has taken a stand in terms of their net zero goals. The CEOs and the boards have declared this as strategic objectives for these companies. And really where we start engaging is the question of, okay, well, from the perspective of the people that have to get this done, where do we go from here? How do we actually chop this down into pieces that are executable? So we're starting from helping our clients navigate the uncertainty as they're studying the landscape, because one, the technology alternatives are rapidly evolving, both in the actual advancement of the technology itself, as well as the costs associated with these technologies, as well as the timing around when some of them could become available. And so being able to study and model that and create these executable roadmaps for our clients that help them put together plans on what they're going to achieve, which technologies, by what time horizon, what magnitude of investments will be needed. It's been a big part of what we've been pulled in to do. And a lot of that, our value comes from providing that holistic perspective, being able to come at it from the perspective of, strategy and consulting, the market modeling and the technology modeling that's needed, separating out, what is hype from the reality of what's achievable, all the way through feasibility studies, pre-feed, feed, getting infrastructure in the ground. Being able to string that together, has always been valuable, but perhaps now more than ever, because of the degree of uncertainty that's involved. So that's been exciting to be part of. And we recognize, I think, that the biggest impact that we can have is through those 7,000 active projects that you had on that slide, right? It's in the work that we touch for our clients. And so we're pulling together solutions that further our clients' sustainability objectives. They're around decarbonization, which is a pretty broad umbrella by itself, renewable energy storage, around zero emission transportation, sustainable water management. And so the portfolio of solutions that clients are asking for, that are interested in, and that become components of getting them to their objectives, is evolving on a day-to-day basis, and very different today from what we might have been focused on, I would say, even 3 years ago. So that's been really interesting to watch and to participate and be part of.
Great, thank you. Christy, I know that you are deeply immersed in execution and implementation. What are your thoughts on this?
I think I'd like to pick up on some of the observations that my colleagues have made here. Couldn't agree more that diversity embodies so many different types of diversity. And Felice, I think you capsulized it perfectly. My observation as somebody who's working quite a bit directly with clients is that diversity is, quite frankly, the winning formula in the existing energy transition, from carbon to low carbon, from more, from the way that we've done business in the past to more sustainable projects, approaches, and fuel sources. Diversity may have felt optional in the past. It might have been something that was great if it happened, but increasingly on the projects that I work with, which, by the way, involves the other three ladies a lot of times, I'm noticing that diversity is actually required in order to optimize the opportunities that our clients are looking to optimize and to manage risk. This is a complex ecosystem. The challenges ahead are financial, they're regulatory, they are commercial, and they are technical. And it really does take a diverse set of perspectives to properly kind of wrap our arms around it, and to navigate the path forward. So the things that I've seen on projects that are real specific, I've seen more diverse project teams, not only from Black & Veatch's side, but also from our clients. When we kick off a project, that diversity takes on a lot of different forms. Certainly diversity in skill set and experience, in background and orientation in the organization. So those project teams are inherently diverse to solve the kinds of problems that only diversity and perspectives and insights can address. Second of all, I've seen DE&I being a core principle in prioritization of projects. Internally, I've noticed with clients, we're serving a project that Felice and I are working on with a Fortune 50 manufacturer, where the DE&I principles that that particular company has are flowing through to the types of projects that they will fund, which we recommend. Externally, we're also seeing that investments, whether from VCs, PEs, or other external entities that are looking to finance the energy transition, are looking at DE&I as a really important criteria for companies to invest in. And I think the final thing I would observe in terms of the external impacts that we're seeing in the role that DE&I can have is it's becoming an increasingly critical lens for companies across many different industries to evaluate their organizational structure and their efficiencies. And I think we could all think of particular examples where companies that we look to serve have certain silos that have emerged over time for a lot of valid reasons, but those silos are challenging and inefficient to navigate. And so we're seeing that DE&I is helping kind of pull together some core principles in the organization, and at least allow us to ask better questions.
Great, thanks, Christy. Lisa, I'd love to pull you in on this as well from the environmental perspective.
Well, it's pretty easy to piggyback off of the discussions that have just been had. And so I'll kind of dive into a little bit from a power perspective, from that of an environmental practitioner. You know, when I started in as a practitioner at Black & Veatch, clients very much were focused on regulatory compliance. That was the E of ESG, making sure that we complied with all the environmental regulations. They definitely, wanted to be good actors and meet those needs. However, that's typically where it stopped. And now what we're seeing in the market are really drivers that aren't just limited to complying with the regulations, but also meeting the needs and feedback from investors and consumers. And that really playing a larger role in embedding sustainable considerations into project development and operation. There's a few ways that we're seeing this manifest, really through use of programs like Envision. If any of the folks participating on the call today are familiar with this process of really systematically working through project development and construction and supporting sustainable decision making throughout that. We're seeing it in, say, solar developments, where they're looking at how do we possibly leverage land for pollinator habitat, for other things that provide co-benefits in addition to the green energy that is being developed. Finally, in discussions with clients there in Canada, it's been particularly interesting thinking about the decarbonization of power and the potential impacts associated with the decommissioning of coal plants. And while the reduction in power generation from coal is good for the environment and reduction of greenhouse gases, that's the E of ESG. We also need to consider the socio-economic considerations for communities whose jobs are really tied to the operation of those facilities. And so we're hearing utilities and others ask questions and consider, okay, as we're considering the decommissioning of these facilities and we want to repurpose those facilities in that land, how do we help ensure that this is good for planet, profit, and then also the people in those communities? And so we're hearing really dynamic discussions and considerations.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, and thank you for making the connection between, environment and social issues, right? I think when we talked about it, you had raised this point where anything associated with climate change and addressing climate change action has an impact on equity, right? Those two things are interlinked, and so, you know, yeah, tackling one invariably has an impact on the other. I know that Christy and I are working on a project right now where we're working with a player in California looking to reach net zero and looking to understand, you know, while meeting these goals is obviously where everyone wants to get to, what are the social impacts, both positive and negative, that could result. So I think those are especially pertinent. Okay, so what I've been finding really interesting is, you know, and Deepa, you touched on this as well, you know, we are on the same journey as many of our clients on the integration of ESG initiatives. And I would think that, you know, us being on this journey will allow us to apply the insights that we're gaining to help us to assist our clients. So on that, you know, what are the top things that you would advise your clients to navigate this complex energy landscape, and really to help assess competing priorities during the energy transition? So I'll start with Christy on this question. What are your thoughts on this?
I have many thoughts on this. I'll try to keep it limited. And I'll talk through the lens of decarbonization. And I know decarbonization is often viewed as a subset of sustainability, and it overlaps with climate change and ESG. Back to Lisa's point at the beginning, which I thought was awesome, is these terms are so interchangeable. Oftentimes at any one company, you know, you might have different folks focused on ESG versus sustainability versus decarb, and they might have different timelines, different budgets, but they roll up at certain points in the questions that you need to ask and answer, and there's some overlaps there. So my first suggestion or piece of guidance based on the work that I've done, not only with Black Veatch, but over the last 25 years in my career, is it is almost as important to have clarity in the questions and the framework that you're using to navigate the path forward than the actual solution. And I'm cool if you disagree. That would be a fun discussion to have. But I found that if you aren't clear on the questions that you need answers to, then it can get easily get off track, or you can spend a lot of money and time and resources in areas that aren't giving you what you need to implement your vision. A second piece of advice or guidance I would give executives that are looking to navigate this energy and carbon transition is to be very intentional when you're applying insights. How are you finding out what's happening within your company if it's a large company with a lot of different activities? How are you connecting what you're really great at to what the market needs? And how are you continually feeding that loop? It's hard. If you know, it's challenging to figure out how to apply knowledge in certain areas, and you know, it takes time. But basically, my advice is that there are lessons being developed and lessons to learn, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are other industries that we can look to that have gone through fundamental upheaval and change in the mega trend kind of category that Felice mentioned at the top of the discussion. And they can be instructive to help us figure out how other similarly situated companies have approached challenges and thought through risk differently. So applied insights and figuring out a way to make that efficient for your company and for you. And then finally, I think whatever you do and how you do it, there's a continuous synchronization of the tools you have and the resources you have to your vision and goal. And so, you know, we obviously in the decarbonization practice serve a lot of clients that have an emission reduction goal or a net zero goal. And it's just not enough in these markets to quote unquote solve the problem, have a roadmap, have a game plan, because those technologies and the costs and the investments involved will involve, you know, continual, you know, assessment. Are we on track? What are the signposts that we set up to make sure that we can pivot where we need to pivot? So there's an element of continuousness to this energy transition that I think begs for us to at least evaluate, are our spears sharp enough to do what we need to do in these markets to navigate forward? So those are the 3 suggestions I would have.
Thanks, Christy. Lisa, same question for you. What would be the top 3 things you would advise your clients?
So I'm going to build off of Christy's points of clarity and the continuum. One of the things, though, that I've found is the very first question that clients often need to step back to and can really help ensure that they're asking the right questions and answering the right questions is, where are they now? You know, there's lots of examples of very aggressive goals that are being set and that are now going to need to be met. The question is, where are you as a company, as a utility today? So you can set that baseline so you can then chart your path forward to reaching those goals in a way that makes the most sense for you as a business, for your off-takers, et cetera. So first would be know where you're at to help ensure that you're asking and answering the questions. And then second is understand and acknowledge this is tough. This is 3-dimensional chess at the least. And you know, we're talking about what decisions do we make. The reality is that our off-takers, those in our areas that are using power, are also making decisions that are constantly changing the equation. And so, you know, for example, we're completing a number of assessments for tech and manufacturing customers who are large consumers of electricity. They have aggressive greenhouse gas reduction goals. And as part of that, they're assessing their scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions, which is heavily dependent on their source of power. And, you know, if those entities aren't geographically restricted, in other words, they can put their facilities in various places, they may choose, and we're seeing them complete analysis that would allow them to choose geographies that have less carbon intensive power sources. And obviously that starts changing your equation from a power needs standpoint, but also all of the social, economic, and other considerations that go along with these large companies and their facilities. And so, you know, absolutely know where you're at, ask and answer the right questions, and be ready for an exciting journey, but recognize it is a journey, and there's a lot of things to happen to help come to the right answer, and then that right answer is going to move because the journey continues.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I think my last question, and I think we've kind of been dancing around it, but you know, we've worked with a lot of clients who have set, you know, pretty aggressive goals, some stretch goals. But what have been you know, the challenges that you've seen in implementing these DE&I objectives? And you know, if you've seen any sort of innovative ways to approach some of these challenges, we definitely, you know, love to hear your take on it. So I'll start with Deepa on this question. And you might be muted,
I'm
Deepa.
happy to. Yeah. I know we're kind of, you know, to Lisa's point earlier, this is a discussion where we're kind of going back and forth between DE&I and sustainability. It's falling within that umbrella of ESG and this path to a better world in multiple dimensions, and they're interconnected. I like that you brought it, you know, back here to DE&I. Again, I'll speak from what we're seeing as some of our challenges. We are in a technical world, you know, the company that we're in, and one of our challenges has been and will probably continue to be access to a pool of candidates that are diverse, that have you know, the technical qualifications that we're looking for. That's not easy. If it were, you know, a lot of us would be further along than we are now. And it's also a patient long game. And that's something that, you know, we're having to learn for ourselves, I think, as we go. And it's everything from engaging early with different colleges, engaging in various women's groups so we can bring, you know, the minorities and the women into considering, you know, engineering and technical fields as a viable career option for them, painting the picture and showing them the vision of what that career choice could look like for them. Leadership diversity is one of the, you know, is one of our strategic objectives in terms of increasing that within Black & Veatch. And that, you know, it continues to be a challenge. Lisa and I are both officers in the company, but that's, you know, it's a rarefied group, I have to say, of women. We always joke when we go to the officers meeting, you know, the women's restroom is like no line. you know, you're in, you're out. In the guys' restroom, there's a line in every break, you know, that goes 3 times around the building. It's one of the few times where it's, you know, it's great being a woman at Black & Veatch. But, you know, I'm joking about it, but we recognize that, you know, that we have a gap. And a big part of it for us has been about taking that perspective that it's a long game and making investments that are broader than just, you know, who are the candidates we have for a particular job. We are paying attention to who are the candidates we have for a particular job. We are paying attention to whether our, you know, our interview panel for a given candidate is diverse or not. That's something that we're starting to require for our job postings and our recruiting process. And so it's multi-pronged, and we're chipping away at it, and really hoping to make this journey in a, you know, what sometimes feel like a slow but sure-footed way to get there. So we further the right candidates. We position candidates who are well positioned to succeed and be good examples. You know, and kind of lift all of ours up in that way.
Elise, if you don't mind, I'll jump in from where I sit at, and actually I was just completing this week a peer analysis related to some different sustainability metrics, and what I was seeing as it relates to the S side of sustainability is a significant number of Black & Veatch's peers, not surprisingly, have gender diversification goals, both in their general population and within senior leadership. And numerical, not just aspirational, we want to see more, but numerical goals, which is interesting and presents opportunities and commitment. To the question of what are the next steps? You know, as I looked at that and to the comments earlier about diversity of thought, and the many other ways that we can experience and bring diverse perspectives, that's where I expect we're going to start seeing the goals evolve, is one that's purely, you know, binary gender-based perspective to one that has more aspects of the diversity baked into it. So that's one aspect. The second item I'd comment on, and this ties into Deepa's comment about the initial talent pool and working to increase the diversity of it. In addition to that, once those professionals that bring those diverse perspectives are in, we need to help ensure that we retain them. And, you know, I'm really excited about Black & Veatch's, specifically our willingness to provide flexible work environments. You know, I personally went part-time at one point in my career to enable my family and I to work in ways I didn't have to leave Black & Veatch in order to help address those situations. Similarly, we have adopted a remote working environment and flexibility to support professionals of all types of family situations, personal situations, etc. And what I believe that helps is really that retention, that enablement of professionals to bring their full selves and they're in the capacity that they're able to at that point in their lives to really drive value to Black & Veatch and to our clients. A phrase I'd never heard before, but I heard the other day was re-internship. It's this idea of professionals who have left their industry, whether it's because of maternity leave or other leaves that they've taken in their lives, and having a purposeful program like internships, but to re-enter them into these very highly capable professionals back into the professional workforce that they had been in. And I'm really excited to see as we exit COVID, as we continue to focus on diversity and inclusion to solve these difficult problems, these types of unique and novel programs taking hold.
Great, thanks. So I think this conversation has actually spurred, you know, a lot of chatter on the Q&A section. And actually a lot of the questions seem to dovetail into a few of the points that were raised. So I'll move on to the Q&A that we've gotten from the audience. For participants on this call, please, you know, keep entering your questions if as they arise, and we will try to get to them. So I think, again, in line with developing goals and then tracking and implementing, one question that came was, do you have any recommendations on how to keep engagement and commitment high to achieving initial goals and then, you know, later on stretch goals?
I can speak to that in terms of clients and projects where we've seen that work well. There's probably an equivalent perspective at the Black & Veatch side internally as well. So Felice and I and Deepa are working on a project that I had mentioned earlier with a Fortune 50 manufacturer. And as part of that project, to Lisa's point about knowing where you are today before you start, you know, going off in different directions to navigate the future, as part of that project, we did a current state assessment and we interviewed 25 executives from that company's project team to really get a more in-depth understanding about what was driving their motivation on sustainability, on their goals, on their objectives, and every single one of those executives we interviewed indicated that their main concern was that the company would lose focus if sustainability wasn't continually put on top of an agenda. And lose focus wasn't just an ethereal concept. It was that folks would not prioritize sustainability initiatives for funding if it wasn't constantly part of the initiative or the discussion or pushed. Because look, you know, there's a lot of competing business lines for funding within any company and then across companies. So the way that they were handling that and are handling that challenge is they have a series of, and I'm sure they have a special name for it, but they have different pods or groups of executives that continually readjust their priorities given that goal of sustainability and emission reduction. And so that is permanent. It's not project dependent. So when the project goes away or is completed, that initiative is no longer there. It's a continual part of every project and a review cycle across projects. And I think in that respect, they're looking at that approach. So it's not driving like permanent organizational change, but it's recognized as important. It's going to be across multiple projects and help them continue to drive sustainability goals across multiple countries and within countries, multiple projects.
Yeah, and I'll open that question to Deepa or Lisa, either, you know, what you've seen work with your clients or internally at Black & Veatch in order to retain engagement and commitment for DE&I initiatives.
Well, I guess I can touch on, or Deepa, go ahead. I touched on one earlier.
Of
So this falls into the category of misery loves company. It seems to be a place where everybody is struggling. And I was just reviewing an agenda for a sustainability practitioners conference that's coming up. And we just polled our corporate sustainability committee members, and similar responses happened of communication. There's lots of good things happening at many people's companies that are making lots of great progress towards sustainable goals. However, getting the word out both externally as well as internally is a real struggle. I know at Black & Veatch it's been very interesting. I monitor our BV.com, our LinkedIn page, our internal website, or BV Connect, because we have different information communicated in all three places. And that's great, but at the same time, it makes understanding the whole story really difficult. And I know Black & Veatch isn't alone, because communication is coming up in this upcoming conference over and over again. And so how to keep commitment and engagement high? Improve communication. Make sure you're not just telling your customers what a great job you're doing. Make sure you tell your professionals what a great job you're doing and how they can engage and be involved as well.
That's well said, Lisa. That was what I was going to touch upon, what you said at the very end. One of the ways to really anchor down the importance of keeping this journey alive is what an important aspect it has become to our workforce as it's evolving, right? The younger generations, they have a sense of mission around something like this, and to belong to a company for whom this is important and for whom that journey remains evergreen, I think might move from being a nice to have to a must have. So it's probably going to support keeping sustainability in the front burner on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and Deepa, since we have you, one question came up about how, if you have thoughts on, or it could share on how companies are engaging offices outside of the U.S. to achieve their sustainability goals. Do you find any different approaches or solutions necessary when looking outside of the North American market?
Yes, I think I would say we do find differences, and it's not a straightforward answer, I think, right? To Lisa's point earlier about, equity is an important part of the question when it comes to sustainability as well. I think, especially in other parts of the world, whether that's Africa or developing Asia, it's much easier to be on the developed side of the world and say, oh, we're going to be clean now. When you've gone through that development path, you've created, these emissions, you've kind of had your turn at progressing your economy. And then there are others for whom, just having access to energy is still not a primary right that they can claim. And, for those economies, all options from a humanitarian perspective have to stay on the table. But how do you balance that against, wanting to save the world and keep our global temperatures down and the big picture? So I do think that is, it's a complex problem. There are very smart people that work on the solutions, recognizing and utilizing tools like offsets and subsidies between developed nations and nations that are earlier in that journey. All of those need to be brought to the table, so we can all kind of succeed together in meeting these objectives, realizing that the reality on the ground and the constraints that different countries operate within are very different.
Thank you. So I think we have 5 minutes left, and I did want to give Elena some time to wrap up. If there are additional questions that you know the audience has, you know, please continue to send them, and we can certainly address them offline. But thank you very much for your time. You know, we've really enjoyed this conversation, and we hope that you have as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Elena. Elena, I think you might be on mute.
Right, thank you. I was just saying that sitting here listening to this discussion, it is such a complex issue of decarbonization, net zero, sustainability, ESG, D&I. There's so much involved in this, this equation. And just listening to you all speak about it, you certainly have demonstrated your level of expertise, your depth of knowledge, your broad look at this problem, working with so many companies to try to find solutions and set those goals. So I've learned a ton. There's a few things like that I haven't heard talked about for a long time. And one of them was specifically around retention of employees. And I think, Lisa, you're the one who brought that up. And being in the HR world myself, we talk about that a lot, but I think it's really, we've got to this point where we're talking more about diversity and hiring it and promoting it. Like recruitment and promotion has become a real point of that discussion. And I think we do need to talk more about that retention piece as we go the journey into inclusion and belonging and retention. They're all tied together. So lots of great insights. I'm glad we recorded it so we can share this with others. Again, thanks for the opportunity to ask more questions, Feliz. If we get any that come through to Women+Power itself, we'll pass them along and go from there. So just wanted to wrap up the session today and let folks know that we're coming into the last quarter, well, we're in the last quarter of the year, and Women+Power has a few more things going. We have a great event next week that's around understanding your value as a power professional. You can find that on Eventbrite now. This was a member-only event, but we've opened up a small number of seats to non-Women+Power members, so you can experience one of our sessions. So check that out. Our peer mentoring circle program is off to the races. We have another 35 people in this program, 7 different peer mentoring circles that will be working together over the next 6 months to really talk about topics of interest, support each other, celebrate each other. And we'll be running another one of those programs next year. So if that's something you'd want to get involved in, certainly keep your eye out. We have a learning series program happening in November around allyship in the organizational context. This is a full member-only event, but just another example of what you can get access to if you sign up as a member. And you'll see another technical speaking series come up. Probably November timeframe. We're just working on this too. And it topically is Power 101 and system operations. So really trying to create a solid baseline for maybe some of our new members, new to the industry, but even those who have been around for a while that want a bit of a refresher and to see where things are at today. We'll be coming out with that. So again, like always, connect with us. The best way to sign up as a member is to go to womenempower.ca and click the Join Us link. That's how you'll get access to all our member-only events and newsletters and such to stay on top of everything we're doing. So thank you very much again to our great panel in Black & Veatch. This was fantastic. Thank you so much for your continued sponsorship of Women+Power, and we look forward to partnering with you even more in the future. Have a great day, everyone.